Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of the Perform Happy podcast. My guest today, it's a long list of stuff. I'm not going to read all of it, but she was a former international elite gymnast, four-time NCAA national champion, NCAA vault champion, celebrated two NCAA team championships as a University of Oklahoma Sooner, 10-time All-American. She's a pretty accomplished athlete, and now she's coaching at U of O. Welcome, Olivia Trautman.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so grateful to get to hang out with you. So
Yeah.
I love to start at the beginning, that
Yes.
little bouncy kiddo. Did
Mhm.
you know that international elite or bust? Like, was that your plan from the beginning, or did it sort of evolve? I'd love to hear, your
Yeah,
story.
for sure. Honestly, it definitely evolved. When I was younger, I started gymnastics when I was about 2 years old. My parents actually put me in all the sports. So I was actually like a multi-sport athlete like growing up. So I did swimming, I did soccer, I did a little bit of basketball, softball, just like a bunch of little things. And honestly, the gym that I grew up at, Twin City Twisters in Minnesota, was super close to my house. It was like 10 minutes away. And so they're like, oh, we're just going to put her in mommy and me classes. We'll see how it goes. And so honestly, I ended up loving it. I was that little focused kid in the room who had like big goals watching the older girls do gymnastics. Like I was like, I want to be like them one day. And so obviously as I started getting better, I started progressing in gymnastics. My parents were like, okay, like you have to figure out like what sport you want to do. Like they weren't pressuring me at all, but they were like, it's up to you. You have to do what you love. So it was between gymnastics and soccer. I was doing both for a long time. I was going to practice for 4 hours and then running out in my uniform for soccer to go to a game. But I ended up just having to pick the sport that I love. And in that moment, it was gymnastics. And so I started obviously in classes, went through the classes, joined like our prep team when I was about 6 years old. Then I went through I basically did 1 year at every level until I was in level 10. So I got to level 10 when I was about 13 years old. And then my coach kind of introduced the elite path. And Maggie Nichols at the time, we trained together. She was at my gym doing it, and a couple of the older girls. So I was like, I'll try it. I don't really know a lot about it. And my parents were bought in. And so I went through all of that elite gymnastics, decided to stick with it, started doing hopes, qualified junior elite and then senior elite. And then obviously I committed to Oklahoma through that process and never looked back from there. But that's kind of like my timeline that I went through. But I was just super thankful that I had the coaches that I had that were willing to help me get to where I wanted to go.
Okay, so going back to the multi-sport athlete,
Mhm.
there is this assumption that you need to specialize at age 5, or it's so crazy young. So how old were you when you finally walked away from soccer and committed to gymnastics?
I was in like level 7, 8-ish. So I would say I was like 10, honestly. Which doesn't seem super old, but like in the gymnastics world, like the girls are getting good super young. And so that was kind of the decision that I made. And it was hard because I loved it. Like I loved going to the games. I loved doing everything. But at the end of the day, like I knew my passion and my talent was going to take me further in gymnastics. And I just love the sport. And so that's the decision I made. My parents were going to support me no matter what I decided to do. But definitely, like, I was thankful that I got to experience like all the different sports growing up.
Yeah, well, and from a biomechanical standpoint, there's so much benefit to cross
Yeah.
training. The
100.
research just says over and over, you talk to Dave Tilley for 5 seconds, it's like cross train, cross train, cross train. Your legs will thank you, your Achilles,
Yeah.
everything is just better prepared when you're not
Yeah.
overusing it only in certain ways.
Yeah.
So parents, if it's logistically possible, it's
For sure.
actually a really great strategy because then
Yeah.
you're training other parts of your brain too. You've got
Yeah.
kind of that broad focus. You can handle. What do you think are some of the benefits of having done other sports so long
I
relatively?
mean, yeah, for sure. Honestly, like just like always being in the gym is can be hard when you're younger. Like you want to experience like growing up and going around like different people. And so that helped me too because I was a little like I was focused, like I said, but I liked being around people. Like I like being around my friends. So that kind of like helped me stay involved, not just solely in the gym world, but with everybody else that was my age and young and going to school with stuff like that. And so, but like physically, it definitely helps. Like you said, like your motor skills, like things you wouldn't think you would need to be a high performing gymnast. So it's definitely like fun to like go to like different soccer games and stuff and whatnot. And they're like, you're the fastest kid on the team. I'm like, well, that's like from gymnastics probably too, but it was also fun to like recognize those strengths in other sports that you don't really realize that you had. And it, honestly, just being in that team environment will help you down the road in gymnastics. It is definitely helpful for me. And then the mental side of it, obviously, again, not being in the gym so much, kind of doing things that you like to do and keeping yourself involved with everything that you're passionate about was something that my parents really wanted and instilled in me, was to just like be positive, kind of have that healthy outlook that you can do anything you want to do, whether it's 5 sports, one sport, like you pick. So for me, doing all those sports was definitely very helpful in my career. And then obviously I ended up picking gymnastics, but it was very helpful for me physically and mentally.
Okay, so you talk a lot about your parents. Obviously, we're
Yeah.
talking about the childhood, but I mean, parents play such a huge part. You ask any club owner, they
Yeah.
see a talented kid with a challenging parent
Mhm.
and they think twice, right, about inviting them on the elite track. So if you were going to give some parents advice,
Mhm.
if they've got this little hot shot kiddo that they want to support, what are top tips for excellent A plus gymnastics parenting?
Yeah, I mean, my parents, I love my parents. They were super supportive of my dreams. They would do anything they could to help me get there. But for me, like I'll just say like going for my like talking about my mom first, she's very positive person. She always was like, you need to see like the better thing and like whatever's happening. So that for me was like helpful. When I was younger, I had no idea, but like as I got older and was like seeing my elite career come along, my college career, when I was faced with adversity, I was like, this is instilled in me. And so for me, that was like super helpful when I was dealing with injury or different mental things that I had going on. But my mom was, and both my parents, but my mom was super supportive in that aspect and always like instilling like working hard, positive attitude, having a smile on your face, because when you're feeling those types of emotions, like you're gonna feel better about your outcome of what you're doing in your sport. And then my dad, I'm kind of more like my dad, like focus, kind of like we have those goals. My mom does too, but has those goals. And he's just like the dad, like before the meet, that's like, have fun, sweetie, like just like not super involved. Like obviously they were involved in me, but they weren't like overstepping the boundaries of like coaching and like stuff like that. They would do whatever they took to help me reach my goals, whether that was understanding what I needed to eat or how much I needed to sleep and like just different things like that. But they definitely like pushed me, made me better, and like fully supported my dreams that I had when I was a little girl.
Okay, so if you came home huffing and puffing and stomping and crying,
Yeah.
how did your parents help you, manage you, support
Yeah.
you?
Honestly, like when I was growing up, I didn't have like a lot of emotions. Like I was that kid that like my mom would ask me how was practice and I'm just like good, like even if it was terrible, that's just like how I grew up. Like I was just very to myself, like I said, like focused on what to come. But obviously when I did have those bad days, my mom would ask me and I'd be like fine, like, and she would just know, like I'd be quieter. She would try to like ask me questions, like talk about what's going on, to get me talking about it. But honestly, I wasn't really that kid, so I can't like give you a lot of advice in that aspect. But I would say just like honestly, like that communication level, like as a parent, just asking your kid how they're doing. If they want to talk about it, they want to talk about it. If they don't, then they don't. And that's kind of different for every athlete, every kid. And so for me, like my parents were really great about that. And just like in the grand scheme of thing, just like having parents that support.
Yeah. Well, and it's really important for parents to know that some kids just don't want to talk about it. And if you're having a bad day and you don't want to talk about it, that can be totally fine. And
Yeah,
then you just feed them and let them go to bed. And then
exactly.
tomorrow's going to be better. You actually don't have to do anything. So it's excellent proof, Olivia, that you
Yeah.
can just not do anything and be there with a smile and a meal. And that could be enough to be the best parent
100%.
ever.
Yeah, because sometimes like you leave the gym, you don't even want to talk about it. Like you don't want your parents to ask you about it. You kind of just want to separate and like talk to your siblings or just talk about random other things that you have going on in your life. Cause that like will help you just realize like gymnastics isn't my whole world. Like there's an outside world that you don't even see. And so for me that was also helpful, just kind of, okay, what happened in gymnastics happened at the gym today in practice and I'm gonna move on. Tomorrow's a new day. So yeah.
Yeah, let's just go home and eat. I tell parents food, hugs, rides, tuition.
No.
There's no interviewing involved in that list.
Literally, literally.
Yeah. Okay. So So then how did you know that it was time to go college versus, continuing to push the elite path?
Yeah, honestly, like growing up, my gym was super well known. TCT in Minnesota was super well known for producing like college athletes. So honestly, like when I was little, I was just like, oh, I'm here because I love it. I had no idea about like recruiting, all this stuff. And then I remember like I was in like seventh grade and I got my first like letter in the mail and I was like, brought it home to my mom and she was like, hold up, what? Like, why are you getting like college mail? I literally was in seventh grade and that's like when the recruiting stuff was happening super early. And I was like, I had no idea, honestly. And so I was like, yeah, like I got this letter today. And then like I kept getting them. And my mom was like, okay, like this is something that like we need to like kind of invest in and like figure out. And so at that time I was doing like basically junior elite. I got recruited in my ninth grade year and I always wanted to be like a college athlete just from seeing the girls that were coming through my gym. I was like, I want to be like that one day. Again, the same thing that Maggie Nichols went through going through elite. I was like, I want to be like her. And then seeing those older girls go to college, I was like, I want to be like them. And so started getting that mail like eighth grade year, went on my visits, ninth grade year, went to like four schools and then ended up loving Oklahoma and committing then. So yeah.
Okay, what was it about Oklahoma?
Honestly, for me, it was the family figure, like stepping on campus, like everybody, not even our coaches, but like everybody from academic staff to our nutritionist to our um, pros department to our, honestly, everything was super like everybody was welcoming with open arms. And for me, that's what I wanted because I was going away from home. I wanted a place that felt like family because going home was a flight away. And then obviously the facilities are great. I love the coaching staff. They really truly care for like not only the athlete you're becoming, but also like the person you're developing into, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be a gymnast forever. We all know that. And so they really take like the development of like personal and like your personal growth like into heart, and they're going to do whatever they can, whether that's academically or you're having other issues, family issues, whatnot. They're just really there to support you and like love on you, and they believe in you every step of the way. And so for me, the coaching staff was super important. And then obviously the resources and everybody there made it even better. But I also wanted to win too. So that was also a goal of mine. Like I wanted to win a national championship, and I knew there that I was going to be able to do that. And so yeah, that's pretty much why I went there. But it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it was.
It
It really
was
was.
a quick decision for you.
Yeah, so they were actually my last visit that I went on. I visited three schools before them. And honestly, every visit I went on, I was like, I love this place. Like, because they treat you like amazing. Like they're loving on you, they're supporting you, they're telling you all this stuff. And again, I was in ninth grade. So I was like, this is the best thing ever. Like, obviously the rules have changed now, but every place you go to, they're treating you amazing. And so it makes that decision hard. It does, it truly does. So for me, it was like the pros and the cons. But when I went to Oklahoma, like I love my visit and they were my last one. And I just had like a gut feeling this is where I was supposed to go. And so I stuck with that feeling because again, all the places were great, but it just truly felt like home for me. So that's where I went.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, now it sounds like it was just such an easy, beautiful road to your dream school.
Yeah.
What were some of the biggest hiccups that got in
Yeah.
the way of your path?
For sure. I mean, obviously, elite gymnastics is hard, no matter what stage you're in. Training in the gym all the time. Basically, we were training like 25 to 30 hours a week, kind of just beating our bodies down to the ground. And for me at that time, I was also traveling to the ranch every month for a week. So going away from family. But that was like, honestly, like the situation was super hard, but I'm thankful it definitely raised me into the person that I am today because I was learned to be like tough in those situations. And so that like helped me a lot throughout my elite career, just kind of having those goals in mind and like what I wanted or like what I wanted to instill in myself, but also the people around me. So obviously elite gymnastics is hard and injuries. I was faced with a couple injuries in club, but honestly, the injuries started racking on when I got to college was the biggest thing throughout my career that I dealt with, the adversity side of things. But again, like I said, overcame those and got to accomplish my dreams.
Okay, so I got it. I got to go into the ranch toughened you up.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's probably I don't know about you, but I know I'm still kind of recovering from my gymnastics career mentally and
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah.
And that, like, you just tough it out. You don't speak up. You just do what they do.
Mhm.
You're compliant. You say yes or else.
Yeah.
Have you had to sort of relearn some things post elite gymnastics that have allowed you to become maybe I don't know what the word is, but
Yeah.
a healthy human post sort of traumatic toughening up experience? And I'm obviously putting those words out there, so you might not have had that
No.
experience whatsoever, but I'd love
No.
to hear.
Yeah. I mean, my experience in elite was everything I imagined to be. Like, obviously, I had goals of making the United States like or not Olympic team, the national team. Sorry, I was just watching trials.
Yeah.
But I had those goals and like I got to accomplish that. So I was super thankful for that. But obviously going to the ranch is tough. I started when I was 12 years old. Just traveling with my coach and a couple of my teammates at the time. There was no phone service. So I was literally the first time I went, my phone didn't work and couldn't call my parents. Like it was just 8 hour or 8 practices in 5 days. So like nothing can really prepare you for that moment when you walk in and it's like the Olympic team, like national team coaches are like there and you're like training. For me, when I was there, it was like Allie Raisman, Simone Biles, Gabby Douglas, like all those people. And I'm like 12 years old and I like big eyes, like have no idea like what's in front of me. So honestly, like the expectation of like when you're there and wanting to be so perfect was what was tough for me to at first, but like obviously I learned to like grow in that situation and like in those practices, and I wouldn't trade those for the world, honestly, because I did like grow a lot in those. Obviously there's more to this, some of the stories that like we know that happened at the ranch, but luckily I never experienced any of that, so I was super obviously thankful for that situation. But yeah, those situations were tough, but again, they raised me into who I am today. Like I wouldn't be able to get through everything that I got through in college, like without them. And then going to school, obviously transitioning out of elite, I actually did level 10 my senior year of high school. And so honestly, like stepping down from elite, knowing that my time was done and going back to level 10 my senior year before going to college was probably the best thing that happened to me in those moments, just because I was fighting little injuries that last year and I was like, I want to have fun. I want to like kind of like figure out transition from elite to going into college, where in elite you're only basically competing for 2 like weekends out of the whole entire year, going to at least club where you're doing like 9 meets a year around there. And so for me, like that year was so much fun. Like we at my gym, we travel as a team. And so we actually went to Hawaii for a meet. Like we were going places. And so that definitely helped me like transition more and like understand that gymnastics can be fun, like that type of things. And then obviously going to Oklahoma, everybody's super supportive. And so that was amazing.
Um, okay, so then 2022,
Mm-hmm.
you get injured,
Yeah.
and your coach looks at you and is
Mm-hmm.
like, "Hon, I think you're done," basically.
Yeah.
And did you believe her when she said that?
So actually, I'm going to take you back a little bit. So
Okay.
my freshman year was great. Like going to college, you have goals. Obviously, I wanted to win as a team. I wanted to get a perfect 10. Everybody dreams about that. And that happened my freshman year. So I was like, this is what college is all about. Like I'm ready to go. And then my sophomore year, actually, so 2020, that was the year of COVID. But before that, we were at our in-house meet in December, like getting ready for season to start. And I was doing literally our warm up on floor, like our tumbling passes, like the last event to warm up. And I was doing one of my leaps and I felt like a crack in my heel. And I was like, so I landed and I was like, I just broke my foot. Like I broke it. I didn't roll it. I just took off like a little weird and I just like knew something was wrong. And so I land and our trainer comes over and I was there like feeling it and nothing was swelling up. And I was like, I like something's wrong. Like there's something wrong. So I didn't end up competing at the in-house meet, ended up getting x-rays, MRIs, CT scans, and they're like, your heel is fractured. So at that point, I was on crutches and in a boot for about 4 to 6 weeks. I don't know the exact timeline anymore, but it was like 4 to 6 weeks. And then slowly started progressing wasn't dealing with pain. And then towards like March-ish, I started dealing with pain again, but it wasn't terrible. And then COVID happened. So it was like we got sent home for like 6 months. My foot didn't hurt. And then I started up my junior year, like this is going to be the best thing ever. Like we're back. And then it hit December again, literally right around the same exact time. And I was just punching the ground and I was like, my foot like is really hurting. So I ended up going back to the doctor because I was like, it's not getting better. And they're like, it's broken in the exact same spot. So I ended up getting surgery in December on my heel. So I got screws put in. And the way that my bones were in the front of my ankle, they were like fused together like this. So they had to separate them. It's kind of like a rare thing that happened. Like it doesn't happen to people. So when I'm like explaining it, it doesn't happen normally. But my bones were fused together. So they had to unfuse them and they put screws into my heel. And then I obviously took the time that I needed to recover, ended up coming back in February and adding one event at a time, and then ended up competing all around at nationals in April. So that being said, like I started training in 2022 to get to 2022. I was training in the summer and like on the same leg, everything happened to my left leg. On the same leg, that's when my knee started like flaring up, a little bit of like patellar tendonitis, and we were just dealing with it, managing it, doing PT, different stuff like that. And it got to a point where like walking and running and going up the stairs like hurt so bad. Like I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to do gymnastics when I like literally can't walk up the stairs. Like it was just like a pain that I hadn't felt before. And so I met with a lot of the doctors. I ended up getting 2 PRP shots that did not work for me. They work for some people, they did not work for me. And at the end of the day, they were like, we can do this surgery. It's called like a patellar tendon debridement surgery. So they basically go in and they take some of your tendon out, the dead tendon that's in there, and they kind of just like hope that your tendon will repair itself, heal. And that recovery, they told me, could be up to 2 years. Like they had no idea because not a lot of athletes get it. But I was like, at this point, like I have to get it because like I need to be able to do basic living functions that everybody does at the end of the day. And so I got that surgery and it worked. Like in the moment it worked. I ended up again coming back in February. I did added one event at a time and did 3 events. And at the end of the year, it was hurting a little bit, but wasn't like anything like major. And then I was training through the summer again, going into my 5th year because I took my 5th year, my COVID year. Because I was like, I've been through injury, I've done all this stuff. Like it's gonna be a good year. I felt like I've learned so much about myself, like how to overcome and like what else do I need to know. And it's about September. I do like a basic drop down front tuck off of a little block. And it like something was not right. I felt a little like sharp pain, told my trainer, got an MRI. And she was like, we'll have the results tonight. Like, I'll let you know. She didn't end up having the results that night. Then the next morning I went to the training room and she was like, I still don't have the results, been playing like phone tag with the doctor. But like, meanwhile, she knew what was happening. She had called my parents. She had called the coaches. She called literally my best friend at the time, or still is, but in that moment, my best friend, and was like, kind of told them what my situation was. And then I got a text later in the day. She was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm at Target. What's up? Like, what's happening? Because I knew the results were coming and I was like, what's happening? And she was like, anyway, I can meet you at your place. And I was like, sure. And so I'm like calling my friend. She already knows, but she's not telling me. I'm like, I'm freaking out. Like, what's happening? Like, do you know anything? Like, and she gets to my house and it's like awkward at first. And she sits me down on the couch and she's like, so, and I'm like, okay. And she's like, so your patellar tendon's torn. And I was just like sitting there because again, I've been through already so much. I was like, okay, like what's the timeline? What's the process? Like, I'll be back. So she's kind of explaining like what they saw in the MRI. And then she kind of starts like tearing up. And I'm like, what's happening? And she goes like, I don't think gymnastics is in the picture. And I just was staring at her like blank face, like there's no way. And I didn't start crying at first. And then she just started like rubbing my back and she's like, it's okay to cry. And I lost it. I mean, I started bawling because it was a moment like where you feel like you're on top of the world, you're doing everything you can, and then you can't do the sport again. Like no one prepares you for that, like ever in your life. Like, and so for me, like obviously I was crushed. Ended up calling my parents. Obviously I talked to KJ, the coaching staff, my trainer, the doctors, and everybody was just loving on me in that moment, was like super supportive. And probably one of the hardest things I had to do was tell the team that like I wasn't able to do gymnastics anymore. I basically sat them down in this room, and KJ brought them in there, and she was like, okay, I'm going to let like whoever's taking over this meeting start talking. And then I just like started crying, and no one was expecting me to say anything because they just thought like she's Olivia Trautman, like she can do anything. And so that moment was really hard. Like everybody in the room was crying. We were sitting in silence for like 30 minutes. Like I couldn't believe it and no one could believe it. And then I ended up taking about 6 to 7 weeks, like basically off because I was going to student coach to kind of stay involved with the team. I talked to KJ a bunch because like it's hard to just give up your sport right away and just like walk away. So she's keeping me involved, and I ended up getting surgery the middle of October. And like 10 days out, I was like, I'm not done. Like I had just had a feeling like I can do it. Like I'm not done. And so we all have those feelings, especially gymnasts. I was like, I'm not done. And so I ended up calling KJ on the phone. Well, I told my best friend first. I was like, I'm not done. And she's like, yeah, you're not. Like giving me like pumped up, like all this stuff, even though she knew. And I called KJ, and I just was like, I just have a feeling like I need to try again. Like I have a feeling. And she was like, you're gonna have to ask. Like, you're gonna have to ask the doctor. You're gonna have to ask our trainer. Like, this is up to you, because at the end of the day, our doctor did like promise me and my family, like I was gonna be able to play with my kids when I'm older. Like I'm gonna be able to walk down the aisle, like do everything like a young woman's supposed to do, and a mom. And so obviously I had that conversation with my trainer, went into my 10-day follow-up appointment, and was like sat down and just like looked at the doctor, and I was like, hey, like, is there any chance I can just try like any like bars, even if I don't get there, like can I try? Like I need to try. I'm that type of person that I can't just give up. Like, and so he told me, it stuck with me like forever in my brain. He was like, I'm not giving you any limitations, but there's no expectations. Like, we're not going to speed up your process. We're not going to push you forward when you're not supposed to be there. Like, we're going to take the time that you need to take. But I'm telling you, like, we're going to have no limitations for you. So I was like, okay, that's like all I needed to hear. Like, especially as like as an athlete, that's what you need to hear to like accomplish your dreams. And so for me, like that was a win. I got home, called my mom, got home, called KJ, and she's like, all right, oh, like you got to show up to morning practice tomorrow, like conditioning. And I was like, what? I hadn't done gym in like 7 weeks. So I showed up with like a big hoodie on my head, and no one knew, like when we were walking in the dark, like no one realized. And then I like took it off, and everybody was like screaming. And then I told them at the gym like what the plan was. So took it slow, like definitely took it really slow at the beginning. Came back the end of January on beam, and then I added bars, and then I added vault. But every time I wanted to add an event, I had to like ask the doctor, like, can I do this? And then obviously my last year was amazing. Like I won an individual championship on vault and a team. So like that was like the icing on the cake. And for me, like my 5th year, I wasn't like sad that it was coming to an end. It was like, I'm just like grateful to do the sport that I grew up loving. And so that year definitely helped me transition to the outside a little bit. And like I learned so much about myself, like as a person, and like who I am, and like how strong you can be when you're put in those situations. And so that's kind of what got me started in wanting to coach, because like I felt the outside, like, and I want everybody who's like going through the sport to experience like the love and like the support you have, and like the chance to win a national championship, honestly, because it's literally a feeling like no other. And if I can like help people like and inspire people to like go through hard times, and like I can relate to them on a personal level and also help them become the best gymnast they can be, then that's what I want to do. But yeah, that's kind of like the synopsis of my college career. Sorry, that was a lot, but that's what happened. Yeah.
Well, I love this quote from KJ. She
Uh,
says, you have to have a huge heart, but you also have to have big guts to do something like this, with your coach looking at you saying, maybe it's time, you know?
yeah.
And she says, so I'm really proud she didn't listen to me.
Yeah, she did. She did tell me it's time. Like, this is it. Oh, and I was like, just staring at her, like crying, because I was like, in the moment, I believed her, because I was like, yeah, my knee hurts. Like, there's no way I can do it. Um, but then like once she trusted me, and like obviously we had a great relationship my whole time through Oklahoma, and still to this day. Um, but she knew that she could trust me when I was willing to say like I want to do it. Like she was like, I'm not gonna hold you back, but like I'm gonna be there every step of the way. I'm gonna be listening to you. Like if you start hurting, like it's over. Like it's over. And so now like my knee feels better than ever. Like it's crazy, but I have no
Wow.
issues. I can do everything. I can run, jump, squat, you name it. So it's honestly like a blessing that it happens.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking back to your mom and that what was
Yeah.
ingrained in you that
Yeah.
everything, there's a bright side to everything. So
Yeah.
even that time off got you coaching.
Yeah.
That the times,
Exactly.
probably all the times I'm assuming when you were injured,
Yeah.
that you have to sort of take a different role on the team.
Mhm.
Is that what did each injury sort of like inch you closer toward the coaching role that you're in now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first time I was injured, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm injured. Like, I'm a college athlete. I'm not supposed to be injured, like all this stuff. And so that was a learning moment. And KJ was always like, you need to be ready. Like, your name can be called upon at any moment when you're healthy. Like, you need to put yourself in the best position you can, like, physically and mentally. So when your name gets called upon, when you're like healthy, that you're able to go. And so that stuck with me. And then obviously, again, like, if I couldn't contribute physically, like leader in that aspect, I was like, I'd take on like more of like a vocal role and like cheer on my teammates and help them chase the dream when I physically couldn't do it myself. And so for me, like just seeing that side of it, but then also seeing that like I still love the sport even when I'm not doing it and I can make an impact on the people around me and like learning from the coaches. Obviously this year was huge for me, learning like all the other things to the sport that you don't really see as an athlete, but just like that aspect of it, like definitely like inched me towards like wanting to coach and wanting to do this career pathway.
Yeah. Okay, so those moments for you where it's like you had this inner fire that
Yeah.
was fueling you, like strength you didn't know you had,
Yeah.
that just kept coming up that you're like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. Where does that come from? For somebody who's in one of those low spots, how do you light the fire? How do you turn that on?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely had days where I was struggling. Like I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like I don't know if I'm like strong enough to do this. Like everybody has those days and it's normal. Like the road's not going to be smooth and it was not smooth for me at all, even though I'm like talking like I got to my dreams, but there was still those days where I was like on the bike for like 30 minutes like I don't know if I can do this anymore. Just like the repetitive days of doing the strength and the conditioning only and watching your teammates. Like those days they're hard, but if you can get through those days, and for me, that was like leaning on my friends, leaning on my teammates, especially my teammates, having those open conversations with KJ, like when I feel like I'm struggling and just her like reminding me like this is all a part of the process. And for me, a lot of it was like when I'd be like, this is like a lot of information, but when I was like laying in bed, just like picturing myself doing a lot of my routines in my head and my skills because I felt like when I was coming back, like I had been doing it the whole time. And so for me, it was a lot of that mental aspect, like knowing that I can still do it, even though like I physically can't do it. That helped me a lot. And then like obviously like I read books, like different like books to help me. I watched old videos. I did everything I could to help my team and like support my team. I was gonna be the best cheerleader I could be. And so I feel like for me, like all those little things that I was doing just like allowed me to come back the way that I did. And it put me in that mindset to come back and like my mom, the doctors, my trainer, they always just preached like if you have like a healthy mind, like whatever you're going through, like physically the injury, like it'll heal better. And so I was like, okay, like I need to be strong, like I need to do this. Like obviously, yes, again, you have those days that you work through. But I was like, if I am positive every day, like then my knee's gonna feel great. Like it has to. Like they always say, like the way that you feel, like portrays like kind of what's happening on the inside of you. And so for me, that was huge.
Yeah. I mean, there's this part of training that is physical.
Mhm.
There is obviously a lot of hours, but what you put into your mind, I think matters almost as much.
Yeah.
So what were some of those, like what were the books? What were the things that really like kept your head on straight during these times?
Sorry. Basically like a lot of it for me was a lot of like the motivational books. So I read like Atomic Habits, like all those like make your bed book, like the little things that like kind of like help you like be kind of like get those little habits in your mind that you don't really realize that help you. But like again, for me, like making my bed every day, like that was I already won a little part of the day. Like I feel better about myself. And then whatever the badass book is, that the one that a lot of people read. Um, and there's like some other ones that I read and like just kind of also that something that I did was like listening to other athletes who had like same experiences as me, not just gymnastics, but like other sports and like kind of just figuring out how they went through different difficult times, definitely like helped me a lot because again, every big athlete or every athlete that you kind of meet like does have those challenging times. And so for me, that was something that helped me like keep going and keep that spark alive.
Absolutely. They say if you want something, hang out with people who have it.
Exactly.
And you can hang out with these people through audiobooks and
Yeah.
podcasts.
Yeah.
And you're like, you don't actually have to know these people. You can just be like, okay, Simone, let me read your book.
No,
You
exactly.
know,
Exactly.
Gabby Douglas, what did you do? And you just like, you read, when's your book coming out? That's my next question.
That's what people have asked me. They're like, "You're writing a book," and I'm like, "I don't know."
Well, this will be transcribed. So that's the first step in that. But awesome. So it's really great to know that you don't just have to be born this amazingly resilient human,
Yeah.
but a positive parent,
Hmm.
parents who don't dig in too much, but are just 100% supportive,
Hmm.
the willingness to overcome.
Yeah.
Like it sounds like you've had that. You're like, how
Hmm.
uncomfortable do I need to be? What do I
Hmm.
need to learn? What do I need to watch or read? Or who do I need to be with? What conversation do I need to have? It sounds like you just have been willing to get out of your comfort zone in
Yeah.
service of your dream.
Yeah, for sure. I
And
mean, just go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, well, I'm just like, and now you've got all these athletes that you get to coach.
Yeah.
How do you impart that? How do you teach that willingness to get out of your comfort zone?
Yeah, I mean, this year obviously I was student coaching at Oklahoma. So last year I was on the team. So it was basically I knew a lot of the girls already because I was on the team with them. I was their teammate besides the freshmen. So kind of we had that trust where like I was your best friend, but now like we've like gained that trust is like, okay, I've seen what she's gone through. I've seen what she's accomplished. Like I know she can help me. And so for me, like I understood that I couldn't overstep the boundaries, like obviously like as a friend, but they also didn't overstep the boundaries as like a coach. And so now like obviously I can give like a ton of advice like from what I went through because we're close in age like and so I could give advice that like when I was having bad days, I've had girls like come up to me and they're like, look, like I'm not confident anymore. I don't know what's happening. And like we just like talk it through. Like we're just like, okay, like what are you thinking about here? What are you thinking about there? Like, or sometimes all you just need is someone just to tell you, like, you got it, girl. Like, come on, like you got it. You know how to do it. You've done it your whole life. And so for me, like that aspect was huge this year, like relating to them and also like um having that boundary of like the relationship that we were supposed to have obviously as a coach and then like I said earlier just like learning the back hand of it so like for the recruiting the business side like the things you don't really see when you're an athlete was instrumental to like the future that I want to have and like the way that KJ and all the staff like work was something that I'll definitely like take to heart and take with me where I go next.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I love to ask this question to kind of wrap it up.
No, you're good.
If you could go back and talk to 12-year-old Olivia and give her just a little talk
Yeah.
that might help smooth out her path,
Mhm.
what would be the most important thing you'd want her to know?
First off, I would probably say to never give up because honestly, like looking back, I don't like in the moment, like I was accomplishing so much, but like when I look back on it, I'm like, how did I do that? Like it's almost seems like you don't have that strength that you think you have, but like you do have it and it's in you. And so for me, it was honestly telling my 12-year-old self would be to never give up because you never know like what's ahead for you. And then obviously like be confident in who you are. There's so many things out there now. There's so many social media. There's so much like going around in the outside world. But like at the end of the day, like you need to focus on what makes you better and what's going to make you tick. You know, best what you need. And so like really listening to yourself and having those uncomfortable conversations or having those conversations with your coaches on what you feel like you need or just different things definitely like would help. And again, when I was 12, I love the sport. And so like loving the sport is huge. It's going to take you far. You're going to have that fire in you because you love it. And so just really listening to yourself and being confident in who you are is probably what I would tell my little 12-year-old, oh, what to
Mm,
do.
yeah, just letting her know you are strong enough.
Yeah.
You are strong enough to get through this. You actually get strong enough as you
Yeah.
go.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, last question.
Uh,
What kind of a legacy do you want to leave as a coach?
as a coach. Um, Probably one that impacts everybody they meet, whether it's like an athlete or anybody that I'm working with, something like that. Obviously, I would love to win a national championship as a coach, so I'm going to do what I can in that aspect. But definitely just being that supportive, that listening ear, and always pushing you to reach the next level, having that high standard, but like also listening to understand where you're coming from and like being that person that's going to support you. And again, like push you to chase your dreams and be that person that's going to be all in on you. That's probably the biggest thing. And then obviously personally, I would love to win a national championship and have anybody who would come through my program win, because I experienced it and it's experience like no other. It like changes the way you go about your gymnastics. And so just instilling that in everybody that comes through, or inspiring them or whatever they need to do to become the person they want to in their next little life. Yeah.
Amazing. I see it for you.
Thank you.
Girlfriend likes to win. She gets to win. She will win. It's just a matter of time, right? You're strong enough. You can do this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. Okay. So if anyone wants to follow your journey, where's the best way to find you?
Probably Instagram at Troutman. Like social media obviously is like says a lot, but maybe one day I'll write a book and then we'll go from there. We'll see. But that's probably the biggest thing.
Seed planted. I would
Seed
love to see it
planted.
happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure getting to know your story today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.